The letter promised Mara Quinn a room with a door. But when she reached Cedar Notch with one trunk, 5 months late, and walking stiff from the coach road, the room had no door at all. It had a blanket nailed across the opening, two raw plank walls, and a square of cold November light lying on the floor like something that had been measured but not yet claimed. Mara stood in that doorway for a long moment and said nothing. The man beside her did not explain too quickly. That was the first useful thing he did. He had met her an hour earlier at the Mercantile, after she had asked for him by name from a folded letter so worn at the creases that the paper had begun to shine. Elias Rusk. She had not read the name as if she had forgotten it. She had read it the way a woman reads a word that may change the shape of her life once it leaves her mouth. The shopkeeper, Mrs. Bell, had looked at the letter, then at Mara's gloves, then at the trunk sitting just inside the door. "He's at the old toll house," she had said, "working the north wall before weather closes." Mara had asked if he was expected back. "Men like Elias don't come back until the light is gone," Mrs. Bell said. "But he'll pass here for nails." So Mara waited. She did not sit on the bench by the stove. Sitting would have made her look like a passenger. She had stopped being a passenger the moment the coach left dust behind it and rolled on without her. Cedar Notch was not much of a town. A mercantile with a bell that stuck, a smithy with one wall blackened from last spring's fire, a church with whitewash peeling in scales, a hotel that called itself a hotel because no one had the heart to call it 3 rooms above a feed store. Beyond that the road narrowed toward pine timber and the ridge. Everything seemed to lean slightly away from the wind. Mara watched it through the mercantile glass. She had come from 3 counties east, by train first, then wagon, then the last 40 miles in a coach that smelled of wet wool and axle grease. The letter in her coat had been written in June. Now it was November. A great deal could grow in 5 months. A great deal could die. She was not afraid of either fact. She had learned early that fear was only useful if it told you where the door was. When Elias Rusk came in, he brought cold air with him. The bell over the mercantile door gave one tired clatter. He paused just inside, letting his eyes come down from the outside glare. He was not as old as she had expected. Not young, either. A man in his late 30s, perhaps, with sawdust pressed into the wool of his coat and a white line of lime dust along one sleeve. His hat was in his hand. His hair had gone damp at the temples from work, not weather. Mrs. Bell said his name before Mara had to. Elias. He looked toward the counter first, then toward the woman standing by the window with one trunk and one letter between her and whatever happened next. He crossed the room without hurrying. He stopped far enough away that she did not have to step back. "You made the road," he said. "I did." "Bad after the creek? The bridge planks are loose. They have been loose since August." He said it without apology, without embarrassment, without pretending the road had behaved worse than usual, just to make her hardship special. Mara found that steadier than sympathy. He looked at the trunk, then at the satchel in her left hand. Only after seeing that she still had something of her own to carry did he lift the trunk. She noticed that. She noticed more than people guessed. Outside, he set the trunk in the bed of a work wagon with no flourish. The horse was a gray with a scar over one knee, patient and uninterested in human arrangements. Mara climbed up before Elias could offer a hand. He saw that too. He gathered the reins. For a while they moved without speech, past the smithy, past the last fence, past the point where town became road and road became a decision. The old toll house sat half a mile beyond the creek. It had once been used by men who took coins from freight wagons crossing the pass. Now it was a low, square building with a patched roof, a leaning shed, and a new north frame rising from one side like a promise not yet safe to trust. "The east sill is sound," Elias said as they turned in. Mara looked at the building. "Is that what was in question?" "Most things are." He set the brake and climbed down. The yard was not a yard so much as a trampled place where work had been happening. Boards stacked by length, a barrel of lime, a ladder laid across two sawhorses, shavings caught in the dry grass and moved when the wind crossed them. Inside, the front room held a stove, a table, two chairs, and a narrow bed rolled tight against one wall. The window facing south had a cracked pane mended with paper and paste. There was order, but not comfort. There was cleanliness, but not ease. He carried the trunk to the opening with the blanket. "That room was meant to be closed before you came," he said. Mara looked at the blanket, then at the raw jamb where a door should have hung. Weather delayed it? Lumber did. That answer contained no request for forgiveness. She appreciated that more than she wanted to. He added, "I can hang a temporary plank door tonight if the blanket won't suit. The blanket will suit for tonight." He nodded once, not relieved, only accepting the measure she had given. There were marriages spoken like vows. There were marriages spoken like bargains. This one had begun as 4 pages written in careful hand by a man who said he had a house that was not finished, steady work that was not easy, and no talent for sweet talk. He had written one line Mara returned to more than all the rest. "I can make room beside me, but I will not pretend room is the same thing as welcome." That was not a romantic sentence. It was better. It meant the man understood the difference between space and belonging. So she had written back. She said she could cook, mend, keep accounts, and work when work did not ask permission from the body. She said she did not require gentleness in words if there was fairness in conduct. She said she would come before autumn if the money held. The money had not held. An influenza house had taken her wages. A flooded crossing had taken 3 weeks. By the time she arrived, the leaves were gone from the cottonwoods, and the room had no door. Still, the room existed. That mattered. That evening, Mara made supper from what she found. Cornmeal in a tin, salt pork wrapped in cloth, an onion gone soft but not spoiled, coffee in a blue canister with a lid that fit badly. The stove was temperamental. It drew well once it caught, but the left plate ran hotter than the right, and the draft door stuck if touched from the top. She learned all of that in 10 minutes. Elias went back outside while she worked. Through the wall she heard him moving boards. Not loudly, not quietly for her benefit, just the sound of a man trying to finish one more useful thing before dark took his hands away. When he came in, he washed at the basin without being told. He stood with his sleeves rolled, rubbing sawdust from his knuckles. His hands were scarred in old places, the kind that had learned not to complain. Mara put the food down. They ate across from each other at the small table. The lamp flame leaned whenever wind found the crack by the south window. Neither of them spoke for several minutes. That silence was not soft. It was practical. It let both of them listen to the house, to the stove, to the weather, to the size of what they had agreed to without yet knowing whether either of them would be equal to it. At last Elias said, "You know how to work a seam?" Mara looked at him. "Cloth or wound?" He paused. Then his mouth moved very slightly. "Window." She followed his glance to the papered crack in the pane. "I can stop a draft. I cannot make glass. Glass comes with the freight wagon." "When?" "4 days, if the road stays hard." Mara looked at the window again. The paper patch breathed in and out with the wind. "Then it needs cloth until glass comes." He did not say thank you. The next morning, before he rose, the window had cloth over it. Not pretty cloth. Useful cloth. Mara cut it from a petticoat that had already lost its claim to dignity. She stretched it tight, tacked it clean, and sealed the edge with paste made thin from flour. By dawn the front room held its heat better. Elias noticed when he came in from the shed with frost on his boots. He stopped by the window, looked at the cloth, then at the stove, then at Mara, who was lifting coffee from the heat. Draughts less. It was stealing half the room. He hung his coat on the peg. Then half the room came back. It was not praise, but it was the truth, and Mara had lived long enough to know that truth could carry more weight than praise. The first week passed in small renegotiations. He left his cup in the basin the first morning. She washed it because it was there. The second morning he washed it himself and left it upside down on the shelf. She said nothing. Silence made better record than correction. She found the flour sack stored in the shed where mice could reach it. So she moved it into a sealed tin and cleaned the shelf beneath without announcing the improvement. The next day the tin had been lifted from the floor onto 2 bricks to keep it from damp. He had seen what she did. He had added to it. That was how the house began speaking. A latch fixed before it failed, a rag under a door replaced by a proper strip of wool. A stool moved to where the morning light fell. A nail left near the mending basket because she had needed one yesterday. Not conversation. Better than conversation sometimes, because talk could be offered by anyone. Attention was harder to counterfeit. By the 6th day, Elias was working the north frame from first light to last. The wall had to be closed before the first hard freeze. Everyone in Cedar Notch knew that, and everyone had an opinion about the woman who had arrived to a room without a door. Mara felt those opinions when she went to town. Mrs. Bell asked if she needed lamp oil and looked at her hands. The blacksmith's wife watched her buy needles. 2 men by the feed store stopped talking when she passed, and began again when they thought she was too far to hear. She heard enough. She always did. "Long way to come for a half-built house," one said. "Long way to leave from, too," said the other. Mara kept walking. Words spoken behind a woman's back had never carried much authority with her. They were usually only men testing the shape of their own ignorance. What mattered was the north frame, the freeze. the blanket over the doorway, and the fact that the coach road would remain passable for perhaps one more week. After that, snow could close Cedar Notch for a month. This was the arithmetic Mara understood best. How much flour? How much firewood? How many coins sewn into the hem? How long before leaving became harder than staying? She had done that kind of counting since she was 17. It did not make her restless. It made her exact. On the 7th morning, she carried coffee out to the frame. Elias was standing on the lower beam with a chalk line in one hand. The sky was pale and hard. His breath showed while he worked. She set the cup on a barrel and looked up. "You need another pair of hands." He glanced down. "For the wall? For the board you keep measuring and not lifting?" He followed her gaze to a 12-foot plank leaning against the frame. "It's heavy. I did not ask what it weighed." He looked at her for a moment, then climbed down. They lifted it together. He took the outer weight. She took the inside end, palms flat, shoulders set, knees bent the way her father had taught her before sickness made him a man who only watched others carry. The board rose, shifted, nearly slipped. "Hold," Elias said. "I am holding." "Not there. Under the line." Mara adjusted by 2 inches. The board settled into place. Elias drove the first nail, then the second. Then he stepped back and looked along the length of it. "Straight enough." Mara flexed her fingers where the cold had bitten. "Straight enough is not straight." "No." He handed her the chalk line. "But it is up." That afternoon he showed her how to snap a line clean, not by yanking it, by lifting only as much as the string required, letting tension do the work. Mara understood that. Cloth had its own laws. So did people. Pull too hard, and the seam warped. Hold too loose, and nothing kept its shape. By the end of the day, blue chalk marked the raw boards in 3 perfect strikes. Mara had made the second one. It was a small thing. She carried it inside like warmth. The cold came 2 nights later, not the first hard freeze. A warning of it. Wind struck the toll house from the ridge and found every unfinished place. The blanket over Mara's doorway lifted and fell, lifted and fell. At midnight the paper patch on the south window tore with a sound like a dry leaf being crushed. Mara woke at once. For a moment she did not know where she was. Then she knew every inch of it. The narrow cot, the trunk at its foot, the blanket breathing in the doorway, the cold moving under it. She rose, wrapped her shawl, and stepped into the front room. Elias was already there, lamp in hand, looking at the torn window. The flame threw his shadow large against the wall. "Glass won't come tomorrow," he said. Mara heard what sat underneath the sentence. The freight wagon would not make the road. The north wall would not close on schedule. Her room would remain a room without a door, and winter was no longer approaching politely. It had put its hand on the latch. She crossed to the window. The cloth had split where the old paste failed. She touched it. Canvas. In the shed. Wax? Some. Needle thick enough for sail work. He looked at her then, not confused, reconsidering. "There is a harness needle." "Bring it." He did. They worked until the lamp burned low. Mara cut canvas from an old grain cover. Elias warmed wax near the stove. She stitched the canvas doubled, tight enough to take strain. He held it while she tacked the corners. Once his fingers came too close to hers, and both of them moved as if contact were a tool that needed proper permission. Neither apologized, neither smiled. Outside, the wind worried the wall. Inside, they made one weak place less weak. By dawn, the canvas held. Mara's fingers were stiff and sore. Elias stood by the window, rubbing one thumb over the line of her stitching. That will last. Until glass. Longer than glass, maybe. She looked at him. There are sentences that do not declare anything and still change the room. That one did. But the day did not reward them for surviving the night. At noon, the boy from the smithy came running with news from the creek. The freight wagon had broken an axle before the bridge. Glass, nails, and 2 bundles of matched boards were stuck on the far side. The road had softened under frost melt. No wagon would cross for days, maybe a week, maybe longer if snow came first. Elias stood very still while the boy talked. Mara saw the calculation move through him. Wall unfinished. Door unbuilt. Supplies delayed. Weather closing. A woman in his house who had come on the strength of a letter written in summer. A letter that now looked careless, though it had not been careless when he wrote it. After the boy left, Elias went to the shed. Mara followed him as far as the open door. He stood with both hands on the workbench, looking down at nothing. There was a square on the bench, a plane, a door hinge with one leaf bent. He did not turn. "The coach runs east tomorrow morning," he said. Mara did not answer. "I can take you to town before first light." Still, she said nothing. He continued, "Because some truths punish a person until they are spoken. This is not what I said I could offer." The shed smelled of pine, iron, cold ash, and old leather. Mara looked at the unfinished door boards stacked against the wall, then at the man who would rather give her a road out than ask her to forgive a house not ready for winter. That was the darkest hour of it. Not the storm, not the broken wagon, not the missing glass. It was that he had made leaving easy. A lesser man would have made staying feel owed. Elias Rusk did not, and because he did not, the decision became hers in full. Mara stepped into the shed. The letter said you could make room. He said nothing. It did not say the room would be finished. His hands tightened once on the bench, then eased. She walked to the stacked boards. "Show me how to hang a door." He turned then, slowly, as if quickness might frighten the sentence away. "You don't have to prove anything." "No," Mara said. "I have to sleep behind something better than a blanket." That was the first time he laughed. Not much, barely sound at all, but enough that the shed changed temperature. They began with the boards that were not meant to be a door. Nothing matched. One plank had a twist. One was rough on the edge. Another had a knot too near where the latch should sit. Elias would have rejected all 3 if there had been time and lumber enough to indulge standards. There was neither, so he showed Mara how to choose what flaw could be lived with. "The trick," he said, "is not finding perfect wood." He set the square against a plank. "The trick is knowing which crookedness matters." Mara looked at the board, then at him. "That is not only wood." "No." He marked the cut. She sawed the first line too fast and wandered off the mark. He did not take the saw from her. He only tapped the place where the teeth had drifted. "Last inch. What about it?" That's where people hurry because they can see the end. Mara set the saw again. This time she slowed before the line finished. The wood gave way clean. He nodded once. She hated how much that small nod mattered. By evening, the temporary door hung crooked by a quarter-inch and closed if lifted slightly at the latch. It was ugly. It was heavy. It was the most beautiful thing in the house. Mara stood inside her room and pulled it shut. For the first time since arriving, the room made its own darkness. She put her hand on the plank. Outside, Elias said, "It needs planing." "Tomorrow, tomorrow," he agreed. She slept 6 hours without waking. After that, the house changed faster. Not because affection had announced itself. Affection is often a poor carpenter. It wants the finished room without learning where the walls carry weight. What changed was simpler. They had found a working language. In the mornings, Elias drew lines on boards. Mara learned which ones mattered before he said so. When he reached for chalk, she had it ready. When she held a plank, he stopped saying "careful" and started saying "higher" or "lower," which was better because higher and lower could be used. He learned that she could read numbers upside down from his account book. She learned that he counted nails before supper and again before bed. He learned that her hands shook only after the hard work ended, never during. She learned that he left the sharpest tools turned away from the door if she would pass in low light. The town noticed too. Towns notice labor more slowly than scandal, but they do notice. Mrs. Bell stopped asking whether Mara needed anything, and began asking what she was short of. There is a difference. The blacksmith sent a packet of hinge screws with the boy and claimed they were extras. They were not extras. Mara knew because men did not send useful metal by accident. The boy came twice after that, not with messages, but with reasons to stand in the yard and watch the north wall rise. "It's bigger than it was," he said one afternoon. "That is generally the aim of building," Elias said. The boy grinned. Mara was fitting a strip of wool along the bottom of the new door and did not look up. But she carried the sound of that grin with her longer than expected. On the 4th day after the freight wagon broke, snow showed on the ridge. Thin at first, then fuller. White caught in the trees above town. The road east was still open, but it had begun to look temporary. Mara went to the mercantile for lamp oil before weather decided for everyone. Mrs. Bell wrapped the bottle in paper. "Coach leaves at 8 tomorrow," she said. Mara counted coins. "Does it?" Mrs. Bell tied the string. "Thought you might want to know." "I do." The older woman looked at her across the counter. Not unkindly, not gently either. Knowing and going are different things. Mara put the coins down. They usually are. She carried the oil home under her shawl. Halfway to the toll house, she stopped at the creek. The bridge planks were still loose. Water moved black between them. For 1 minute, she let herself imagine the eastbound coach, the stove at a boarding house, a room rented by the week, work paid in coins, not trust, a door that came with the room already hung. Then the wind shifted, and she smelled pine pitch from the toll house shed. She went on. That evening she found Elias at the north frame with the plumb line. The weight hung still. He stood watching it as if the whole house were speaking through that one cord. Mara came beside him. "Mrs." Belle says the coach runs tomorrow. I know. You were going to tell me? After supper. She looked at the plumb line. The cord was dark against the pail boards. What were you going to say? He took time with the answer. That was another thing she trusted. He never spent words before he had earned them. I was going to say I can drive you in. Mara breathed out once, almost a laugh, almost not. And if I don't go? The weight at the end of the line moved a fraction in the wind. Elias looked at it until it stilled again. Then I'll plane the door right. That was all. No promise, no claim, no hand reaching. Just the next necessary work. Mara felt the answer settle somewhere too deep for speech. Then plane it right, she said. He looked at her. Only once. Then he took the door down. Winter did come, not all at once. In warnings, frost hardening the yard, a skim of ice in the wash basin. The horse steaming in the morning. Snow bright on the ridge and gone by noon in town. The freight wagon reached Cedar Notch 5 days late, with the glass intact, and the driver in a temper dramatic enough to entertain everyone but the horse. Elias bought the panes. Mara bought 2 yards of plain muslin, a packet of lamp wicks, and 1 spool of blue thread she did not need, but wanted with such clean force that she refused to apologize for it. They glazed the south window together. He set the pane. She pressed the putty. His line was exact, hers was smoother. They disagreed without arguing about which mattered more. In the end, the window held both. Light came through it the next morning without the blur of cloth. Mara stood in the front room and watched sunlight strike the table. It looked different. Not better because it was brighter. Better because the room no longer spent all its strength defending itself. Elias came in behind her and stopped. "The light reaches your door now," he said. She had noticed. She did not tell him so. By then the temporary door had become less temporary, planed edges, a proper latch, hinges that no longer complained. Elias had offered to replace it when the matched boards arrived. Mara had looked at the crooked grain, the wax mark near the bottom, the place where her first bad saw cut had been planed almost away but not fully. "No," she said, "this one." So the flawed boards stayed, not as failure, as record. A house keeps account of what people survive inside it. Mara knew that by then. The door remembered the night of the wind. The window remembered the freight wagon. The north wall remembered her shoulder under the heavy board. The table remembered 2 cups set down in silence, until silence stopped being empty. Near the end of the second week, Elias opened his account book after supper and turned it toward her. The gesture was small. The meaning was not. Mara wiped her hands before touching the page. There were columns for lumber, nails, glass, lime, freight, horse feed, and the final payment due for repairing the old toll house into a winter dwelling. "You keep clean books," she said. "I keep nervous books. Better than proud ones." He watched her add 2 figures in the margin. "You were a clerk?" "No." She kept writing. "My mother took in sewing. My father cut stone when there was stone to cut. Numbers were the difference between bread and hoping for bread." He absorbed that without pity. Good. She had not offered it for pity. The next morning he left the book on the table. Not by accident. Mara entered the cost of hinge screws and wrote blacksmith credit beside it in a careful hand. When Elias saw it, he said, "That was not paid. It will be." He looked at the line again, then closed the book. 2 days later the blacksmith got a repaired coat back, with both elbows mended and no bill attached. After that, no one in Cedar Notch could say exactly when Mara Quinn became part of the toll house, because there had been no ceremony of it, only records, hinge screws, coffee, a straight chalk line, a door that held. Then came the schoolhouse job. The town had needed the schoolhouse roof repaired since spring, which meant the town had spent 7 months discussing the problem in the traditional manner of small towns, often, loudly, and without lifting shingles. The first snow on the ridge changed the discussion. Children could not learn under a roof that leaked on both Scripture and sums. Mrs. Bell came out to the toll house herself with the request folded in her apron pocket. Elias listened. Mara stood by the stove, kneading dough, and listened too. "The committee can pay half now," Mrs. Bell said. "Half after Christmas collection." Elias looked at Mara, not for permission, not exactly, for the number. She had already done it in her head. "Half now buys shingles if the mill gives 30 days on boards," she said. "Nails from Mr. Cole if he takes mending credit against part." Mrs. Bell's brows rose. Elias did not smile, but his eyes changed. "Weather window?" he asked. "6 days if the ridge wind stays north," Mara said. "4 if it turns wet." He looked back to Mrs. Bell. "We can start Monday. We." The word entered the room and stood there like a new piece of furniture. Mara kept kneading. Her hands did not stop. Mrs. Bell looked from Elias to Mara and had enough wisdom to make no comment at all. The schoolhouse roof became the work that settled the matter. Not for the town. For Mara. The roof was steep, the shingles stubborn, the air cold enough to make fingers stupid. Elias did the high work. Mara cut, counted, tarred, carried, and kept the boys from wasting nails, as if each nail were personally known to her. At midday she warmed coffee over a small fire behind the schoolhouse, and handed cups up one at a time. On the third day the younger of the two boys dropped a bundle of shingles and split half of them against the step. He went white, expecting anger. Elias opened his mouth. Mara spoke first. "Count what broke." The boy blinked. "Now? Broken things still have a number." He counted. 7 full loss, 3 usable if cut. Mara nodded. "Then we lost 7 and gained 3 short pieces. Stack them." Elias looked down from the roof. The boy obeyed. No one shouted. The work continued. That evening, as they walked back to the toll house under a sky the color of pewter, Elias said, "Broken things still have a number." Mara kept her eyes on the road. "They do. Your father's line?" "My mother's. She sounds formidable. She had to be." They walked a while longer. Then Mara added, "So did I." Elias did not answer immediately. When he did, his voice had lowered. "I know." She almost stopped walking. She did not. Some acknowledgments are easier to carry if your feet keep moving. The roof was finished on Saturday before snow. The last shingle went down under a thin, sharp sun. Elias climbed down. Mara handed him the remaining nails in a small cloth, counted and tied. The school committee stood in the yard, making the kind of pleased noises people make when work they postponed becomes work someone else completed. Mrs. Bell looked at the roof, then at Mara's hands. Clean job. Mara flexed fingers stiff with cold tar. Dry job if it holds. It will hold, Elias said. He said it in front of everyone. Not loudly, but enough. The final payment came 2 weeks later in coins, a sack of flour, and 2 promises that were nearly as good as coins, because Mara wrote them down while the men were still warm with gratitude. That night Elias spread the money on the table. Mara set the account book beside it. They counted once. Then again, the stove made a low iron ticking as it cooled. Outside, snow had begun, soft at first, not yet serious. Elias pushed 3 coins toward her. Wage. Mara looked at them. I did not ask for wage. You did work. So did you. He pushed the coins another inch. I know what I owe. The room was very still. Mara looked at the coins, then at the door she had refused to replace, then at the window where glass held back the night. What are you buying with the rest? Lumber if roads open. A second room before spring. You already built the second room. No. He looked toward the north wall. That was shelter. He tapped the account book once. This would be shop space. For you? For us if you want the work. There it was. Plain, level. Not dressed as romance. Not softened into need. A place beside him offered as work first, because work was the truest language they had. Mara touched the 3 coins. They were cold. She did not pick them up. What kind of shop? Repair, framing, accounts, glazing when freight behaves, anything the town has neglected long enough to become urgent. That is most of the town. Then we may prosper. She looked at him and saw the carefulness in his face, the restraint. The door he was leaving open because he understood, finally, that welcome could not be hammered into place. It had to be fitted, measured, tested by weather. Mara picked up 1 coin and set it on top of the account book. Then another, then the third. Put it under lumber, she said. Elias did not move. For a moment the only sound was snow touching the window. Then he opened the account book and wrote it down. Not gift, not charity, not wife money folded into husband money and vanished. He wrote, Mara Quinn Rusk, share towards shop lumber. He hesitated at the name. She noticed. She always did. Then she reached across the table, took the pencil, and drew a clean line under it. That will do, she said. By morning, snow covered the yard. The road to town was white and unmarked except for 1 set of rabbit tracks near the shed. Elias went out to split kindling. Mara stayed at the table a moment longer, looking at the account book. The house was quiet around her. Not empty, quiet. The front room held heat. The south window held light. Her door held shut without lifting. On the shelf sat the spool of blue thread, useless and bright as a small kept promise. She rose and went to the stove. Coffee first, then bread, then the schoolhouse account, then whatever board needed measuring after that. Outside, Elias's axe fell in a steady rhythm, not hurried, not showy, useful. Mara stood at the window and watched him work until he looked up. Neither of them waved. Neither needed to. Behind her, the door she had helped build stood square in its frame. The room was no longer just space. It was welcome, and this time she knew the difference.